Last week live did not get going well. It started out good, had a lot of problems with the internet. This week I think I have it solved. Did a lot of work to upgrade the internet in the home over the last week. So hopefully this one will come out a lot better and we can get going. I had a good week and I'm excited to get back into gardening. So we're heading deep into this period where I want to call it, this is your planning. Well, you've done a lot of your planning. You've done a lot of your preparation. You've purchased a lot of seed. I bought seed last year. I bought seed this year. And I have all the seed that I would like to get planted. And now it's time to get things into the ground because I'm less than a month away from my last frost date. We're going to take a look at some of the plants that we've already planted from seed. Take a look at some of those, see how they're doing, and give you some updates. You can already see one right here. Now this petunia, I did not grow it from seed, but I bought it as a really small plug, and it has been doing really well. This is Petunia Lavender Blush, and this is what's really wonderful about petunias. They'll do this all summer long. All summer long, it will continue to throw out these beautiful flowers. You see this one is already starting to go over, starting to wilt, but it will throw out these beautiful flowers all summer long. They're annuals. Get the mic set up. All right, again, this petunia will do this all summer long. It'll throw out these beautiful flowers. They're annuals. And I have some from seed that we started. This I bought as a little plug, and it is doing really well. But really, all of the ones that I purchased earlier in the season as small plugs are doing well. Here's a white one, Thumbelina Diane. Now, the thing about this one, it says that it's going to be more of a multi-petaled bloom, but as I look at this bloom, it's a little crinkly, right? But for the most part, it doesn't appear to have all that extra depth. It's not a blousy bloom as what the picture is indicating it would be. And that just could be that's really young. I've had flowers that do that before. And so sometimes they don't throw out those more complex blooms every single time. I've had roses do that. I'll get as the plant is young, it's still maturing. Some of those blooms will be, say, 5 petal blooms or just kind of one layer instead of those really dense blooms. I've also had hermicallus, which is daylily. I've had those do that as well. Some of the daylily, which would have those double petal and double blooms. At first, they don't give me that. So I'm not going to, give up on that plant just yet. It may still produce. But look at this beautiful purple. And I did try to match the, look at that. That purple is just, it's almost fluorescent. And it is velvety. And that is really a beautiful petunia. So what I did try to do was I tried to balance the colors. I just kind of set them here so you can see. I wanted colors that would be complementary. And what I did was, let me put this in the center. So let's say I plant these in the same pot or plant them very close to each other. It's complementary where you have this beautiful single color purple petunia. You have a white petunia here, and then you have this bicolor, bit of a white and purple, kind of heading into a lilac. So you see the color family that is complementary, and these plants will look good together. So if you were to plant these type of petunia together, you can see the foliage is very, very similar. I had a situation a couple weeks ago where there was differences in the foliage, and I got those under some grow lights, got them, under some stronger light, much closer to the plant. And now the foliage is all much more consistent. This is still a little bit more green, dark green, but you can see that beautiful petunias. And these are just getting started. And of course, I have others. I just wanted to bring these up as a representative of what these petunia can look like and what they're going to look like. Now, okay, let's stay right here for a moment and just talk about this. And what I want to talk about here is plant design, where you have these plants. Now you can make the determination of where do you think these plants will look best. You already had ideas as I was getting started buying these plugs. I had some ideas. I was thinking about in a pot, trailing. The plant is a petunia. These are petunias. James, these are petunias. A very old school plant. I used to grow these as a kid. My grandmother grew them. And usually could only get maybe just this purple and say, well, it's this white. And over the years, they've developed different cultivars. You get this nice here. This is a lilac, kind of a nice color. But what you could do with these petunias, because they're a bit of a growing and trailing plant, you see how that's falling over. These will look really good in a pot, especially if you had a pot that was sitting up high. This plant is going to grow out, trail down, and it'll have these beautiful flowers. If you were to plant this in a border along the edge of the border where it would be seen along the front of the border, I'm doing well today. You're a rancher. I'm a bit of a farmer myself. More of a hobby farmer currently, and of course a gardener. These look good in a pot. If you plant them in a border, they look great in a border. And you can stay color blocking where you just plant just this one color, or you can plant multiple and let those blend and grow in together. You can see how these flowers would look really great together. So I just want to bring out these petunias and show them off because they're doing really well. Now the petunias, they're a bit of a fragile plant. You can't take this one and be rough with it. It's an annual. Even when it's at its best, it's a bit of a fragile plant. So you have to be very careful not to break these stems. These stems are not extremely strong, but they're beautiful and they're annuals and they look great. So I want to show you real quick before we move on past the petunias into the next thing we want to get into here tonight. I planted some other petunias from seed and they've been doing really well. Let's take a look at these. Now they're very small. As you can see, the plants here are very small. I want to get a little more light because some of these are kind of leaning to the left and to the right. So I'm going to get these under a little bit more light. And I can tell by the feel of it here, the cells are a little dry. So I need to get a little bit. Now the other end of this is not that I did not plant this other end with petunias. I originally planted it with squash. And I've already taken the squash out and moved those into larger growing cells. But these are petunias that I grew from seed. It was really small seed, but this tiny little plants here are about 2 months behind. It'll be about another month, maybe a month and a half. They grow really fast, especially once they get up and start growing again. At this early stage, this young plant, you would not want to put any fertilizer on this plant. These are too young. You put any fertilizer on these, you're likely going to kill these small young petunias. But this is about a month separation between this to this, maybe a month and a half. But when you grow them from seed, these were bought as plugs, right? You got a lot of variety there, and they've done really well as plugs. From seed, the greatest benefit is that you get more plant for less money. It does take more time, so you have to get your timing right so that you have them ready for your growing season. Again, it's about a month still until I get to the point in the year where I can plant these outside. So these still have quite a bit more time to grow, and I think they will do really well. Still not large enough for me to say, let me take them out of these growing cells, nowhere near. I see some starting to come up here. There's another little tiny one right there. It just broke through. So some of these are taking a little longer to germinate. But I'm gonna put the top back on these, and these will go back into a windowsill. I will get a bit more light on them, but they're doing really wonderful. From seed, the greatest benefit again is that you get more plant from less money, and you also have a lot of opportunities to get some varieties. Let's say this is a type of variety from seed that I can grow at the garden center. If this is all they have, then this is all I can buy. From seed, I get a bit more variety. But considering, again, what time of year it is, where I am in the growing season, the main thing that I need to do right now is look into the middle of the growing season and beyond and say, okay, what do I want? And the main thing I want to get into tonight is planting some, and this is a pepper that is snuck in there. I'll plant that pepper a little later, not tonight. I want to plant some of my pumpkins. Now, I love growing pumpkins. I just think they're the coolest thing. But I don't know if you noticed around that fall season, when you want those pumpkins and you want to go and get them from your grocery store or your shopping center, they're going up on price. They're becoming a bit more expensive. When I remember, you can get pumpkins, a large size pumpkin for a few bucks, a couple dollars, maybe a little bit more, a few pounds, right? Now they're 5 pounds, 7 pounds more. If you could go for a larger pumpkin, you're talking 20 pounds. I went to last fall, I went to a farm that was growing pumpkins, and it cost a lot of money to buy pumpkins. So back to saving myself some money. I picked up some seed last year. Now, what we're gonna plant here tonight is, this is pumpkin sumo. You're not gonna be able to make this picture out too well, but it's a large pumpkin. Let's see, I don't know if they have any details on here. 5 seed. Okay, it's on the back. Sow indoors and good compost. I have that. Planted outside late May, which is, again, I'm getting close to that point right now, being planted outside, water regularly. But this is going to be, I think this pumpkin is going to get sumo. I think it's going to get up to about 50 pounds. And so I'm always on the hunt for growing really large pumpkins. And I don't necessarily think I'll be able to grow giant pumpkins, but this sumo is going to be one that I get in the ground here. Sweet dumpling squash. That's a really pretty little pumpkin. It's kind of green and white striped. Nice little squash there. And onion squash. I like this one because they're just orange. I like the shape. I get it. I know these images are really small. The point of it is Turk's turban squash. I want to get some of these into these larger growing cells. And I also have some seed. Kind of move this over very carefully. I took these seed out of pumpkins that I grew here last year. This is green and white. So this came out of green and white. Now some of these seeds have cracked. And then this is a blend from different pumpkins that I grew last year. And that gloss was that slime that's on them. But I just let these sit. Want to see, I can see some of these are still good. Most of these are still good. I can feel it. When you feel it, and it has a nice firm texture to it. If you look and if you see that the seed is cracked, then that seed is not going to germinate. It's not going to grow. Here's an example of a seed that is cracked. You probably can't make that out. It's really small. But that seed right there is cracked on the end. That's not going to germinate. It's not going to grow. Pumpkins, because of the size of the seed and the size of the plant, I don't want to start it out in a growing cell that would be too small. So you saw those petunias, really tiny growing cells. I would never want to start a pumpkin out like that. Pumpkins also don't like to be messed with too much. They don't like to be replanted too many times. So I'm going to start out with my pumpkins in these much larger growing cells, because I think this is an appropriate size cell for a pumpkin plant, especially say the sumo, which is going to be really large. Last year I did manage to grow some pretty good sized pumpkins. I think the largest one I grew last year was about 27 pounds, which of course by no means is that the largest, right? The largest pumpkin grown in the world was a couple years ago, and it was 2,700 pounds. It weighed as much as a small car. And I love looking at those giant pumpkin shows, and giant pumpkins are really cool. So I don't want to grow anything that large. I don't know what I would do with it. I don't have a means to transport it. If you ever go to, say, the state fair, if you're in the US, it's a state fair. If you're in the UK, it could be a county show, say like the Great Yorkshire in the UK. But in the US, it could be your individual. I do not grow tobacco. I've never grown tobacco before. Oh, I've always, and you know what? You say you haven't had luck with pumpkins. That's interesting. I've always had really great luck with pumpkins. To the point of, here's one that I grew last fall, and I'm definitely gonna replant this. This pumpkin was grown last summer, and it's done. It's solid. It is still solid. I wouldn't want to try to eat it at this stage, but it has sat here over in the corner. I just let it sit over in the corner, and look, listen. And it is, I love this. I love this. I grew this from seed last year, and this pumpkin is zucchini. It looks like a very Italian name. Don't have me mispronounce that, but I'll hold this up so you can see the variety. I hope you can see that. You could take a screenshot of that. And I hope it's probably inverted. I'm sorry about that. But it produced these beautiful, beautiful pumpkins. And I'm definitely growing this one again. I love getting these. Let's go back to what I mentioned a moment ago. That if you try to go to a shopping center in autumn and buy this pumpkin, they'll charge you $10 for this. If you go on farm to buy this pumpkin, you could pay maybe up to 15, maybe a little more for this, especially with like all these beautiful warts all over it. Nice warty pumpkin, kind of gives you that nice, beautiful Halloween theme on it. This is going to cost a little bit of money. However, you're growing from seed, you can have an abundance of them. I was trying to grow giant pumpkins last year at Atlantic Deal, and I planted this by accident. And it was beautiful. And again, this is set in the corner since last year, rock solid. So I've always had a pretty good ability to grow pumpkins. If they're rotting on you, it could be a factor of too much water or not enough sunlight. If they're being overwatered, that could cause the fruit to, and it also depends on if you're growing a large pumpkin or a small pumpkin. It really does matter. When you're growing the larger pumpkins, you don't want that pumpkin to sit on the ground. What I mean by that is, so as my larger pumpkins would grow, I'd actually put sand up under it, or I put a board with holes in it under the pumpkin to keep that pumpkin up off the ground. Because sitting on that soil could cause, if you have a fungus or insects that can get into it, and that could actually, yeah, cause your pumpkins to rot. So I kind of baby them a little bit, and then for my smaller pumpkins, I actually plant them in pots. I don't put them in the ground. I plant them in pots, and I plant them in my flower beds. So they're growing, especially the small ones, they're growing amongst the roses, just kind of tucked in under there, and sitting on a bed of mulch. And I haven't had much problem. And I've grown pumpkins like that for over many years. I do tend to mix. This is a nice compost. I can see it has a lot of this kind of chunkiness to it. And I think that that's really a nice organic compost is what these pumpkins will need to really get started. So I'm only probably going to plant about 2 seed from each variety. And if you start to get into some of those larger pumpkin plants that I was talking about, you do have to have space for them. The large ones that I grew last year, I did grow some Atlantic Dill, and Atlantic Dill just is named after the farmer who originated, who hybridized them, and he grew some beautiful, what's called giant pumpkins, and his family still owns kind of the rights to that particular type of variety of pumpkin, and you can buy it, sell it in shopping center, grocery stores. But those plants take a lot of space, and we're talking a full-size yard. So, I grew about 3 plants last year, and we're talking about a space. Or let's just talk in meters, about 10 by 10 meters. A large size room, and if you get to some of the pumpkins that's going to grow 200-300 pounds or larger, one plant can fill up your entire backyard. So I'm not going to get too deep into all of that. That's why I'm not trying to grow them of that size. I just want to get a lot of really cool variety of pumpkin. And I know you're like, hey, you're talking pumpkins and we're here in early spring. Well, that's kind of how you have to think about gardening, especially if it's a plant like a pumpkin. They can produce seed in about 150 days. I mean, produce a plant, not seed. Can produce a nice pumpkin in about 150 days from when it's first planted. But if you really want to have some really great ones in the fall, now is when you definitely need to start thinking about getting them in the ground. And that's kind of how it is in a lot of cases. When you want to seed a plant, you have to plan that out months ahead of time to make sure that when you get to the right season, you kind of have to be a season ahead with a lot of your gardening to make sure that when you get to the right season, you have that plant for yourself. And if you wait until the end, you can kind of buy it as it is available, blooming. It's going to cost you a lot more money. I keep talking about money because with all the expenses in the world, the last thing you want to do is spend too much money on gardening. I do grow some beans. I haven't planted any beans yet this year. And I hadn't really thought about which beans. When I grow beans, I like to grow a black bean, red beans, a southern bean, I call it, which is a cowpea, with a black eye peas. I grow a lot of peas. Now those are really great, but to get a bushel, so to speak, which is a lot of them, you have to plant quite a bit and dedicate a lot of space. So I don't do a lot of row crops. I have some space for it, but I tend to grow most everything that I'm doing is going to be on my back patio in some really nice sized growing pots, and knowing what I have time to dedicate to. So, of course, as most people, I have a day job, and gardening is a hobby that I get a chance to do. And I always tell people to think about, what do you have time for? And don't get in over your head if you're going to be growing. If you're going to be growing plants, don't plant so many that you're ahead of what you can handle. Cows and horses, fertilizer. Then the problem, if you have cows and horses, that's really nice. You can produce tons of compost. It's little cow paddocks. I grew up in Arkansas on a farm. Spent my youth working with cattle, hauling a lot of hay. Yeah. In my free time, when I had the time, I was playing sports and everything. But around that, I've always gardened. I probably started planting the flowers. My dad was into a lot of tropical flowers there. You could grow a lot of tropicals across the summer in that area. So we grew a lot of canna, a lot of elephant ears, and I remember as a kid, he would stop. We'd be driving along, and if he'd see a plant that he liked growing in the ditch, you get a lot of dahlias growing in the ditch, a lot of canna growing in the ditch down there. And the ditch is just along the side of the road. And you get these plants just growing. He would always keep a shovel in the back of his truck, and he literally would stop and go and dig these things out of the ditch. And if he would be driving by and he saw someone had a group, especially in canna, which is if you're not familiar with canna, it grows long shoots, flowers at the top, really pretty, broad leaves. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Sometimes this happens when I get to doing it. I actually have some canna in a pot that fits over here. I have a banana tree over here as well. And what he would actually do is stop and go knock on people's door and say, "Hey, do you mind if I get a little bit of that?" Because he was always trying to find different varieties and different colors. And at that time, we're talking probably in the 90s, before the modern internet. You could only kind of get what was available either in the store in the spring, and it wasn't nowhere near as much as it is now. Or you could only get what you could see in a catalog. But if you're driving along and you see a beautiful flower, it was very common. You stop and knock on people's door and ask them, and sometimes, almost always, they say, "Yeah, just take a little piece," because canna is it's not necessarily a bulb, but it grows on this root, not even the rootstock. Actually, I think I have one over here. Yeah. So here's the canna, Queen Charlotte, to show you what this looks like, this bulb, what it looks like for this plant. And these get really small. These are really small, they get really large. And as long as you get that, right, get up under it, dig it out, pull that out the ground with the stems, it'll come back year after year. All right, not covering these right now, but what I am going to do is make my selection. Of course, I really like this plant, this pumpkin, a lot. So I want to plant, and because of how large these plants are, I'm only going to actually do one seed per cell. I don't want to do two, because normally you do two, but I feel pretty confident that these will come up, and I'm going to plant 3 of this one. Little discoloration here. It looks like it's rotten, but still really solid. Are they similar? They are similar to iris in that the root of it looks like an iris. If you ever get iris from that root, it looks very similar. But the plants can grow really tall. They look very different. Let me see. Try to spin this around. Up. That's a canna right here. And it's not doing so great. It has a light sitting over it, but I'm going to get this outside in about a month, and actually it needs to be watered. That's really what's going on with it. It's a little wilted. It needs to be watered. And it looks like I actually have a little bit of a slug that's probably in here as well. That's a canna. That's a variegated canna. Typically, you don't keep them like this. You would let that go dormant over the winter. But I wanted to test it out. I bought that late in the season last year, and I wanted to bring it indoors. Okay, I wanted to bring it indoors and see what I could do as far as just keeping it. It's just a bit of an experiment to see if I could keep it healthy enough through the growing season, because in where they come from in the tropics, they grow year round. Okay, so a lot of people like to snip off the ends of their pumpkin seeds before yeah, they are very tropical, very tropical. And that banana plant, which is sitting beside it, I bought that as well. And I didn't want that to go dormant because I want to get to some bananas before the end of this growing season. And it's grown. It's put on probably another foot. The leaves are getting really big. In about another month, it will also go outside on the back patio. Hopefully it'll get a lot larger at that point. The days are starting to get longer now. Oh, so I only have, you see how large these pumpkin seeds are? Since I like that pumpkin so much, I'm gonna plant actually a bit more of it. What I tend to do, some people take these, soak them overnight, or snip the little end off of it. I personally don't do that. I just kind of there into the soil, press it down into the soil about an inch to an inch and a half. Then you can lay it flat and also press it down. It will work about an inch, inch and a half down into the soil, and then cover that up. So I'm gonna do, because I like that plant so that pumpkin so much, I'm gonna do 2 rows there. So I'm gonna plant 6 of those, and that's all the seed that I had. Now these seeds were purchased last year. Also doing six because these seeds are a little bit older, but beautiful, beautiful pumpkin. That's your first 2 rows planted. Really easy. After I get them all planted, then I will come back and mist across the top, and then I will water this. This is sitting in a tray. Well, I can't pick it up now, but it's sitting in a tray so it can hold a little bit of water. The next one I want to get planted is going to be Sumo, because it's going to be the larger pumpkin, and those larger pumpkin, those plants do take a bit longer, need a bit more time. 5 seeds of Sumo. So I may end up having to do 2 trays, and that's okay. I may just do 1 tray here tonight. Seeds look good, nice, firm. So planting pumpkin seeds I find to be really easy, and these will come up in about 7 days at the most. It'll take about 7 days, and these plants, especially with these larger ones, you see how large that seed is, they will grow really fast. So I have to be prepared and ready to get this into even a larger pot to get this into the ground. They're gonna grow really fast. So if you, hey, come back to this channel, I will show you across the weeks of what these pumpkins look like as they're growing. Sweet dumpling is next. This is one of those smaller varieties. I have 1 cell left open right here. So what I'm going to do, a couple of these. Because these are really small, I will actually do 2 in this cell, and that'll allow me to actually get 4 of those. So 1 there, 1 there, 2 here, and 2 here. I actually still have a bit of seed left over, so I'm just going to fold that up. I don't necessarily have to save these seeds because I have this pack of sweet dumpling, and I have this pack which is also sweet dumpling. And I probably have some sweet dumpling in some of the seeds that I saved from last year. But I really enjoy those little striped pumpkins. The kids, they like them. Actually, sometimes they get to take them to school and set that to the side. Yeah. Some of the pumpkins I saved from last year, I will plant those in a different tray. I'm gonna need 2 trays considering how many. And this Turk's turban. I would love to have an orange tree as well. You have to live in the right zone for orange trees. I love when I go out to California, San Francisco Bay Area, and I'd go out there and there'd be orange just everywhere, orange trees growing in people's backyards. I have friends also who live in Houston, family members who live in Houston, and I would always get jealous because they have lemon trees in their backyard and they produce these beautiful, massive lemons, much larger than the lemons that you're buying in the grocery store. But yeah, whenever you can have something like that, some lemons or an orange tree, that would be really, really cool. But you have to have the right growing conditions. Of course, historically, when you didn't have the right growing conditions, you could grow them inside of an orangery. Those large historical gardens that you go to, say like Kew, which is a large garden over here, they have an orangery, which is basically just a grow house, glass and a grow house, and people historically could grow oranges in those large, large gardens. But who has that kind of money? You have to have a lot of money and a lot of space to do that. Is there another one? Okay. And I do not have the money or space to do something like that. Or the other side of it is this is an onion squash, just kind of small. It's a very odd shape. Has a little hook on the end, and I just thought it would be really cool. This is a really good compost. You mentioned that it has a nice color. It does have a nice rich color to it. I don't tend to buy compost that is specific to, they sell a compost a lot of times that says, oh, great for starting plants or great for mature plants. I buy a general compost. This is a general compost because I have found in my experience that a general compost works just as well as that more specialized. Sometimes, you know, those stores will sell you something. I'm not saying that there's not value in it, but the value in it may be so small it may not be worth the markup. So I tend to just buy a good general all-purpose compost instead of buying specific compost, and I can use it. Okay, it's gonna be, and that's gonna be the last. That's the last sales here. Unfortunately, when you do these larger sales like this, they're great because they give that plant more space to grow, and that's all planted out. So I have some seeds left. I have some of the onion squash seed left, and then the sweet dumpling, which is that green and white. A little bit of the Turk's turban. Have some of those seeds left, and again, sweet dumpling. These I will set aside. I won't plant any more of these this year. More than likely, this will be all that I do as far as those pumpkins are concerned. But I still have to set out another tray to plant some of the seeds that I saved from last year. This tray is full. I'm not gonna be able to get anything else in there. And what I'll do now is just kind of mist it, just kind of set that soil in place. What you don't want to do is, so you have your water container. It's come across here, a lot of people do this all the time. Now the pumpkin seeds is a little different because the seed is so large and they pour the water across the top. And what that does, a lot of times it just kind of makes a huge mess, lifts your seeds up out of that soil, which is a kind of a dry soil, lifts the seeds up and just kind of pushes them around all over the place. I like to grow in cells. Some people like to grow and start seeds and they don't have these individual cells. It's just kind of an open, how do you put that down? They don't grow in individual cells. It's just kind of an open bed here. But I like to grow in individual cells and plant individual seeds, one or two per cell. That way I can kind of manage it a bit better instead of trying to separate out little seedlings. I don't like to separate out seedlings. So, James, do you grow your tobacco for personal use or do you grow it to sell? And yeah, I don't know. And so I used to live in Maryland, and of course, Maryland had a lot of tobacco farmers. And the state of Maryland, probably the government, is federal government, state government. They came back and they paid the tobacco farmers, over a 10-year period to stop growing tobacco, and they moved them on to a different crop. They wanted to get out of the tobacco business. And so if you were a farmer and you could prove that you had been growing tobacco They actually paid you what was roughly about a little more probably what you've been making. You could go and say, here's what I made over the last 3 years. And the government said, okay, we will now pay you this same amount of money not to grow tobacco. So they actually got the farmers over roughly a 10-year span out of growing tobacco on a large scale. Philip Marlboro is in Virginia, and so the tobacco will be grown in Maryland, taken down to the Philip Morris Marlboro plant down there in Richmond. That plant I think is still there, but yeah, they got out of that business across the entire state. So I don't know many people who still grow tobacco at all. Like to grow your own. That's really nice. That is really nice if you can do that. Growing, rolling it yourself. Am I covering them? Well, I definitely covered a lot. And the problem I have with covering them in this particular case is I don't have a clear container. So maybe you could use a saran wrap to cover it. This room, I don't necessarily, honestly, I don't know if I need to cover them because this room has a really high humidity. Humidity in here is about, oh, what is that, 46% right now, and it goes a bit higher. I have a humidifier in here because most of these plants behind me are tropical. And the reason you're covering them is because a lot of times you don't want those plants to dry out. I want to keep it in this room. There's a really high humidity in here. I typically don't cover my pumpkin seeds. For my petunias, I cover them. For my marigolds, I cover them. And a lot of other plants, I would definitely cover them to help those plants germinate. For my pumpkins, I haven't found that necessary. I have some other, we'll see. I don't think I'll cover it mainly because I just don't have something large enough to cover it that I will feel comfortable placing over a tray this size. I'll plant these seeds out. I have some seeds left. And if I don't get good germination on my next go round, I'll probably come back and cover it. This time, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm probably going to see if I can skip it. I have found pumpkins to be such fast and strong growers. If you have good seed, within a week, these will be coming up. And I'll show you what these look like in about a week. I'm gonna mist it across the top. Where's my mister? And this is my little fancy mister. I bought this. I just think this is cool. And that's really just to kind of set the soil in place. Now, what I do, especially when I planted, say, the petunias, I misted marigolds, and those plants, those seeds are really small, and I would just kind of mist like this to set the soil and then water from the bottom, not from the top. So very similarly, I'm going to do the same thing here. Just mist it. I'm not trying to necessarily water it, but it does help that soil get set in place. If these were smaller seeds, I would not mist from this. I would be farther back. But then these pumpkin seeds, they're not moving. They're about an inch and a half down in the soil. So I can get a bit more. If if I have a smaller plant, I've missed, from up here, just kind of like a light rain. But these pumpkin seeds, they can kind of handle a little more aggressive misting. And I like my little copper mister. I think I bought this from Target a couple years ago. I just love my little, it's brass, not even copper, it's brass. I love my little brass mister. James, your wife is a gardener. What type of things does she like to grow? I do a lot. So you can see all my indoor plants here, a lot of different types of indoor plants, a lot of outdoor plants. I prefer more horticulture. I exist in that space of horticulture, which is that space in between. There's agriculture, which are like row crops, and large scale agriculture, which James may be more into that. And then there's home gardeners that just do really tiny spaces. I'm more of that horticulture, which sit in between, where you grow. I'm growing pumpkins. I'm growing indoor plants. I'm growing tropical plants. I have fruit trees. I kind of dabble with a little bit of all of it, and that's a fun place for me to exist with growing plants, and I really enjoy. I've been doing it, a lot of years at this point. But you never stop learning, right? Is with all things, you're always trying to learn more about how to do it well, and then how to do it better. These pumpkins are pretty much set. What I'll do now is water these trays from the bottom. Get this in a nice windowsill. I do have strawberries. I love strawberries. And so and the strawberries are great because they send out those runners and they're producing new plants all through the growing season. So I have a raised bed out in the front yard. I have strawberries out there. And what I call my mother plant, the first plant that I bought last year, she had beautiful, nice, chunky strawberries. The other plants, which were a year or so younger, produce smaller strawberries. And they're all outdoors right now. The difference between the US and the UK, and I haven't seen this available here in the UK. In the US, you can buy strawberries as bare roots. You can go into, I can't think of some of the company names right now, but they will send you strawberries. They'll ship them to you, bare root. You can also buy them, I think, in Walmart, and some of the garden centers, Lowe's, Home Depot, as bare root. And that is the easiest way to get hold to some strawberries. They don't sell them here bare root. I have to wait till they put them out and they sell them in small plugs where they basically they got the bare roots, the plants are already growing, so I can buy them in small plants. But I can't buy the bare roots. I would love to be able to get the bare root because you typically come in bundles of 25, and so you get a lot more strawberries. I mean, I'm all about getting more for less, right? Strawberries come back year after year after year. You get a nice bed of strawberries going. So I have a large raised bed. It's actually a cattle trough, water trough. It's a cattle water trough that was filled with dirt many years ago. And I said, this would be a perfect bed for strawberries because it's about 1.5 feet up off the ground. So I don't have to worry about rabbits or any of those low critters getting in there. I do have to worry about birds, but I don't have too many problems with birds, especially if I can get out there and pick those strawberries because they tend to grow under a couple of leaves. So I have the top leaves here and those strawberries will be hanging right there. If you keep an eye on them, and just as they're turning red, if I tend to just grab them before the birds get to them. And I haven't had a problem with that. Upstate New York. Okay, wild strawberries. I used to try to eat the wild ones in Arkansas, but they're a different variety. They're not poisonous, but they're definitely not tasty. And there's tiny little wild strawberries. That the strawberries that we eat have been heavily, I guess, modified from the wild strawberries to produce those larger, very fruity strawberries. I love those fruity flavored, right? The flavor is really good. The have been increased. People have worked with them over many years. A lot of breeding strawberries over and over again to get those great varieties that we have now. I love getting alpine strawberries, which are the ones that are the little. They stay kind of a white, off-white color. If you ever seen an alpine strawberry, they're not as sweet. They definitely have a unique flavor. Mulberries are really nice. I haven't had a lot of mulberry, and I definitely have never grown any mulberries. But I've seen mulberry plants. I've tried to plant them before. I think it's on a tree, right? I've tried to plant them and not had any success. I would love to be able to grow because I think mulberries sometimes can maybe get about this long, right? To get those nice mulberries. I tried to plant them in the trees, just never had any success. I know in certain areas you can have great success growing mulberries. I've never had really much success. So most of my growing was either in Arkansas when I lived there, and then I lived in Maryland, Southern Maryland, which was at that time I think it was zone 7A, 7B. The mulberries should have been able to grow there, but I just never had a lot of success. And that's something I can tell you for a fact. You'll have some things that you can grow really well, and some things that no matter what, you don't have the greatest success with it. And that's fine. There's so many different types of plants, different types of fruits, vegetables, and some things you'll just have a knack for. Me, I love growing marigolds. I've been growing marigolds since I was young. I have a knack for growing marigolds. I do pretty good with petunias. Some plants I do really well with, and then there's some others that I just have never really had a lot of success growing. So your wife grows produce and herbs. That's a good way to go. And then that also potentially could save some money for you if you guys are eating what you grow. I last week planted a lot of tomatoes. They're covered in a windowsill, and I don't have them on a heating pad because the temperature in this room. I have a heater in this room to keep this whole room hot, so I don't necessarily have to put my plants on a heating pad. This room right now is, what is it? Look at about 76 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the daytime it's going to heat up in here, get close to about 80 degrees. So this room stays nice, the humidity stays high, and it stays nice and toasty warm in here. pretty much year round. That's why I'm able to grow the cannon here. That's why the banana tree is growing here, and a lot of the begonia and a lot of other tropicals, which my indoor plants are leaning mostly towards tropicals. Um, they do really well in these conditions, but that's also great conditions for starting out a lot of my outdoor plants, which I'm in that phase right now. I the problem I have with growing herbs is that they tend to take over. So I used to grow a nice lemon herb, which is a little herb, and it has like the leaves have like a lemony flavor to them. Boy, that thing just it would get out if you put it into the ground and it just spearmint is another one that if you don't keep an eye on it, you'll look around and it will be everywhere. And that depends if you like that, but if it kind of grows to too much abundance, and so I kind of doubted back on growing a lot of herbs because I find that they are just prolific. If you grow them really well and they really like the growing conditions in your garden, then you'd end up with a lot of that particular herb. But yeah, so I've grown spearmint, I've grown peppermint, I've grown a bit of thyme. But I love lavender, but I've never had success with growing lavender. Not so much as a herb, but I just enjoy lavender. I've gone to lavender farms. I just really love it, but never had much success with it. I know the conditions are really unique. Oh, you have peppermint. Peppermint is really great. You can take some peppermint and then put it in your tea as well. You get you a nice peppermint tea. Mix that in with like a black tea. Uh, Nice peppermint black tea. I love doing that. Gardening as a hobby. That's pretty much what I do. This is not my day job. I enjoy gardening as a hobby as well. I find it's relaxing. I have a big family. Like I have a lot of kids, six children, wife, six children, work. But I come in here. It's one day a week right now, typically on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. It's kind of late here in the UK. It's actually I'm gonna cut this off because it's kind of getting late. But late on Sunday evening, Sunday nights, I get a bit of time. I would come in here, close the door, and just spend some time with the plants. I do it throughout the week as well, but this is my one time that I kind of get to just spend a lot of time. You have knowledge on a lot of them, but you don't grow them. Well, again, it's all about what you have time for and what you have the knowledge, and if you have the time, do a little bit, get a small pot if you can, if you want to, and then if not, just try to make sure you hold on to that knowledge. You get a chance to pass it along, then do that. That's part of the reason I jump on the live. I enjoy doing it, but also to kind of share some of the knowledge that I've had, basically off of my experience of growing. I grew up with my sons last year. I got to talk about these pumpkins. Um, I did not. So I'll start them out like this. But with strawberries, I find strawberries and pumpkins are really great for small kids. And I don't know the age of your grandsons, even up to teenagers. But yeah, I didn't do it this time. I did this kind of on live. But last year, my sons helped me put the pumpkin seeds in the ground and into pots. Within a week, they see the plants growing up, and then I took them outside, and then I let my boys help me get them into the ground, and then they would help me water them because we water them throughout the year. So it's helping the kid, let your kids jump in and help you with your growing and gardening. It's a way to pass along a lot of those skills, and it's kind of those nice moments that you get the opportunity to do something. So you have a chance to do something with your grandsons there, James. That's a great opportunity to pass along some of your knowledge. You kind of have to sneak the knowledge in, right? 7 and 17, yeah. Depend on their interest. You know, they may be interested, they may not. But my dad snuck in a lot of knowledge with us when he had us out there with him doing a lot of gardening and working around. And again, just being exposed to it also helps. So even if they're just there and they see you doing it, that helps because you draw back on that. So my dad may not have been thinking about the fact that I was in the truck with him when he would stop at these people's homes to ask them about, hey, can I get some of your flowers? But I was there and I saw it. And it didn't jump back in the truck and kind of beat me across the head with it. And it says, hey, now you see, I asked these people for the flowers. He just did it. I witnessed it. I retained it. And then, now later on in life, and I look back on that, I said, wow, that was really nice. And so it's the same thing with those grandsons. If they see you doing something, if they're just there, they can absorb a lot of that. The 7-year-old wants to ranch. That's really good. That's really good. I have a family farm. So I live in England right now. Been over here for right at 5 years. My wife and I, we work over here. But back in Arkansas, we still have family land. and family farm, been in the family for generations. And at some point here, pretty soon, we're thinking about cutting away from what we're doing. We both have like professional jobs doing stuff, but we're thinking about switching it up, living a much more I would call it uh, rural American life. If you know anything about it, then you kind of know what I'm talking about. Just country. We have space, we have land. Go back to the country, get a good school system, get the kids out there, let them grow up with dirt in between their toes. Is the thought process. So we've been debating on doing that, but you kind of have to make some preparations before you do that. But that's kind of something we've been leaning towards. We want my kids to have a really nice American upbringing. They're still young enough. The oldest is only 13. The youngest are twins. They're one. So we have time, a few years still. The oldest may not get as much time in that system, but the others, because 13, 12, 10, 8, I'm just to one. But the younger ones can have a great experience with that. So that's what we're thinking about doing, switching it up. We're definitely going to head back to the States here at some point. I'm not sure when we head back, but probably within the next couple of years, we'll be heading back to the States. And we're trying to decide, do we want to go back and be country mice or city mice, right? So you can go back and be a country mouse or you can go back and be a city mouse. And we're trying to decide which one of those we think would be the best for us and which would be the best for our family, for our kids. I do think I grew up rural. My wife kind of grew up rural, and I find it to be, I had a great childhood, great upbringing, and I think my kids can benefit from that. So we'll see. We have a bit of time. We'll keep working it out. In the meantime, I'm keeping my green thumb green by gardening, and I'm going to get the boys out here, kind of help me with these pumpkins and definitely with these strawberries. But my battery's running down on my phone, guys, and it's almost 10 o'clock here. So I had to call this one and shut this one down. But I try to jump on these lives every Sunday. Normally it's about 7:30 British Standard Time. I think it was about an hour and a half late tonight. We were traveling. We went down to Bath. If you're familiar with Bath, England, I know there's a Bath, Maine, but Bath, England, they have hot springs there, and it's the only place in the UK that has a hot spring. I grew up down the street from Hot Springs in Hot Springs, Arkansas, but I wanted to see what the hot springs were like here. So we went down there for the weekend and went and toured the museum there around the bathhouse, the Roman bathhouse. So this is actually the Romans had a bathhouse there about, I don't know, 1,000 years or so ago. And that was really interesting to go and kind of do that. But it meant that I got back home late here on a Sunday, but I still wanted to jump on a live. I'm running out of time. I appreciate everyone who kind of jumped in and stayed in this live with me. It's been wonderful. It's been a great experience, and it's part of the exchange of talking with people like James, and I want to, Milana, and everyone else who kind of jumped in. I apologize if I said your name wrong, but it's just been great to have these exchanges and with people who I otherwise wouldn't have opportunity to talk to. So thank you for jumping in live. Appreciate it. And I hope you have, it's a Sunday, so I hope you have a great week going into next week. And if you ever jump into again, next live next week, then great. I'll see you then. If not, do take care.